Hello. I think Mike's picking me up, maybe. If anybody's in the chat, if you can tell if the mic's picking me up or not. Not really sure. Oh yeah, never mind. Think it showed up there. Hello, welcome to the Roach Wiggle, September 29th, 2022. False cockroach time, all the beetle mimicking roaches. Now it's the other way around. I don't think there anything that mimics a cockroach. It's usually cockroaches doing the mimicking. So I'm not really sure if there's anything that actually intentionally mimics a cockroach. Huh. So anyways, here we are. September 20, whatever the date I just said, 29th. I can actually leave the window thing, the blinding shade thing open because the sun is now setting at an angle where it doesn't shine in here in the evening. Kind of sad because it means that summer is going away and we're in fall. Oh yeah, no, I know still, but it's interesting. Shane, I don't know if there are any false cockroaches. Like there are things that look like beetles in art and whatnot. So let's see, anything important to discuss. Here's my opportunity to plug one final desperate time for the auction this weekend. Again, I have to sit. Where's that noise coming from? Oh, that's my phone reminding me I have a live stream today. Thank you for coming in late. October 1st and 2nd, this Saturday, Sunday, it is here. We're here. This Saturday and Sunday for 12 hours. I will be stuck in my house a fair portion of that time in this very chair with lots of cool bugs available from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. If you have not already looked at the pre-live stream, I guess, I'm not exactly sure what to call them, pre-stream thingies. I think if you're subscribed, you should be able to see them. And the description has all the rules and whatnot in them. 24 hours of live stream in 2 days. Someone's building a case for an insanity plea. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty bad. It's gonna be pretty bad for you. I don't know. It'll be even more casual than this at times because I at some point I have to go to the bathroom and I also have to eat and do other things. And so there will undoubtedly be some times where I will just be on here munching away at something, I'm sure, more so than usual. And yeah, that'll be that. Schedule's posted. I think I've got a handful more things I need to inventory. It's gonna be pretty crazy. It's gonna be pretty crazy. And again, it may end up being a situation where the day has come and it is a big flop and nobody wants dirt cheap rare Cubaris or dirt cheap rare roaches or something, and or it might be that people get into arguments in the chat and are going for the jugular verbally over things. So let me say hi to everybody who's here. We got Shane, Alan's here, Chris, the return of some eggs as well. Yeah, I gotta print off like something that says like inventorying or getting ready for the next round and stick it to the chair. And yeah, so it's gonna be something. If it's as fun as I'm hoping it could be, and as it goes as smoothly and as efficiently as I'm hoping it should, then turn it into an annual thing. This is kind of just testing the waters here to see how things go. But if it goes well, maybe an annual thing. Maybe even do another one. Hello, Amanda, as well. DDoS tools. Yeah, it's everything that I put on the little, I mean, this is the bare minimum, but everything that I put on the little advertisement image should be should be included. There will be auctions for all of those organisms. The only exception is I checked my Pacnota esculca colony and I don't have any larvae, which is what I was going to auction off. And I checked my Pacnota esculca colony and I don't have any larvae, which is what I was going to auction off. And I don't know why I don't have any larvae. I have plenty of adults. I haven't like done anything weird to the substrate, but everything else should be groups of them available. Or will be, I should say. So other than that, this last week has just been, what did I do? Saturday I took a day off and met up with the people who I would normally see on a not day off, such as Brandon and Will, and a few other folks like my old coworker Tom from when I was working with Drew for creating sustainable landscapes, and my good friend since high school, Mr. Mark, and we went to an arboretum and just sort of hung out, and then where do we go next? Went to Cabela's. Found out that Cabela's the main things we're going to go to Cabela's for next. Went to Cabela's. Found out that Cabela's the main things we're going to go to Cabela's for were actually closed. Probably as lingering things from COVID. We're going to go and get the bison burgers, and their food court is closed. And then we're going to go look at the antique trade-in gun section for Will. Will's a big World War. He's a big everything fanatic, and we were hoping that he would be able to point out some interesting models and tell us some history stuff about them. But the gun library was also closed, or at least the cool guns, the antique guns. And so he's just like, okay, well, why do we come here? And then after that, we went out and got some Ethiopian food, which is interesting, very filling, very flavorful, very filling. And then Sunday, I drove all over the place, picking up stuff, dropping off bugs, Sunday was a full bug day and all over the state. So that was a lot. And then basically a week of working, getting orders out, and finishing just today, finished my isopod husbandry. I think it took me until 5:40. Started at around either 11:40 or 12:30, and I was doing it solo. Christian's actually been doing. I have so many containers that I need cleaned and stored, and so Christian's been working on that. Usually helps me with husbandry, so I did husbandry solo so he could do cleaning, and so that took me 5 hours to go through all 400 isopod bins or whatever it is. So it's been a day. It's going to be a day tomorrow finishing things. It's going to be a night tonight finishing things up too. But I'm okay with the stream being a bit longer. I kind of need to diffuse a little bit from the go. Because again, Saturday, Sunday is going to be kind of go all day. Not as bad because I have 12 hours. So good to hear that your order came in, Shane. I figured you would have told me if otherwise, but thank you for publicly posting it here. So anybody have any questions about anything? I don't know if Tennyson's here. Tennyson is usually here, but I just saw that he sent me an email. There's some questions I could probably answer publicly here and save my fingers from some pain. Anything else going on? Bug stuff, maybe. Show us cool bugs. All the bugs I want to show you don't think are cool, Alan. Well, you might. Maybe if I had something really, really cool like those red Texas web spinners, I could show those off, but I don't. So Hmm. You know, it's a little empty in here ever since I cleaned it up a bit because I had the cool storage fridge thingy and a bunch of mesh cages and stuff, and now I've kind of got it down to more of a science than an art in here with positioning of things. So Cinerina probably hasn't closed yet. Did I leave both the mails? You know, maybe that's something I could pull out real quick. Oh, these things finally get closed. My male Cinerina torcata. Oh, was that a projectile poop onto the keyboard? That's delightful. Just what you want on your Thursday evening is a projectile beetle poop onto your nice, clean keyboard. So you know what? Whichever one of you hasn't pooped yet, you're gonna go over there, and whichever one of you did poop we're gonna just tidy up that bum a little bit and show you off. There we go. Just like kindergarten, just like a parent with their child in kindergarten. Tidy up the bum, then show them off. All right. So here we are. The Cinerina. Okay, here we go. We learned this last week, was it? I think it was. I covered my face and shoved this in front of the camera, and hopefully it'll. There we go. Cinerina torcata subspecies intergrade, or not pure ugandensis, or maybe ugandensis, whatever. This is the U.S. blue line, which when they're moist, they don't look as blue as when they're dried out. So it's a pretty big beetle too. It's about the same size as the female Goliath beetle that Kai showed me last weekend. So it's a pretty good sized beetle. And I have males and females together now. So I figured I would rotate through the males that I have, so I get a good diversity of patterns going on. Because the first male that it closed, I don't know if I showed it off, but it has pretty much solid blue with no white markings, and then you got this guy with a lot of white, and this other one over here with just a little bit of white. But nice horns, nice little horn there. Let's try this out. There we go. Cover my face, shove it in front of the camera. I think it was Amanda who told me to do that. I'll go like this. There we go. Look how close this camera can. Oh wow, that's actually pretty crazy. Wow, I didn't realize how good this camera was. So, lifespan, Kai originally told me a year, and then he had like some croak after like 2 months, and he was like, "Oh, shorter lived than I thought they'd be." And I was like, "Oh, maybe it's because you don't have yours in the deluxe suite like mine are in." So I have some females that are going on 3 months now and not showing any signs of slowing down. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was, actually upwards of a year. Maybe I can't imagine less than 5 months for something this big, and it takes them so long to get to this. It took these guys 9 months ish to go from first instar to these guys. So I can't imagine something that takes 9 months to mature only lives like 1 to 2 months and then dies, especially when it's this large. Get him to fly. So, well, this other one might decide to fly. I can't get over the forearms. Let's see, was it trochanter, coxa, femur, tibia? The front tibia is just so specialized shaped, like it doesn't want me touching it. But it's just there has to be a specific reason why it's shaped like this. Like there's too much detail. Like maybe it's the ideal shape for using against your opponents and shoving them off or scooping them up or something, or dislodging their tarsi when you're fighting them, maybe. So, or smacking them. I did notice that with the dichronorhinos, the males tend to do a lot of slapping on each other. It's actually kind of funny because with the horns, you'd anticipate there would be a lot more bumping or head area usage, but with the dichronorhino, there was a lot of wild arm flailing, wacky arm waving inflatable tube man, or whatever the meme is, with the dichronorhino. So maybe this is the same. I have these two males which I yoinked out of their pupal cells who aren't 100% good to go yet. I mean, the ones when I let some of them Mycinerina naturally pop out of their cells, and they naturally come out very soon after closing. It's not like something like a Dynastes tityus or something that will sit and wait in the cell for a very long time. It seems the species is just inclined to just pop right out. So I don't feel too bad going in and getting them because I'm impatient. Where was I going with this? Oh, these ones are, they're probably nearing full awakeness, but not enough that I'm worried about them fighting in the container I have them in. But I still don't want to have more than one male in with the group of females at one time. Look at that horn. You the one who had erectile dysfunction when you emerged? Maybe. Or one of them had a crooked horn. Or not crooked side to side, but up to down. So. I can't do it with I can't dual wield Mycinerina, guys. Sorry, and get good results. So let's see. Anything else? Unfortunately, I won't have any of these for the auction. Probably have Dichrono. Actually, no, I will have Dichronorhina for the auction. So these are still going to be a couple of weeks or months or however long it takes for females to produce larvae yet. So reminds me I have to rehouse my Cetoniscoma, because apparently they prefer to lay in leaves and not in wood and compost. So I gotta go downstairs and do all that, and oh gosh, it never ends. Although I feel like it's gonna end. I feel like after the auction, after I get everything done at the auction, and then I have the expo the following weekend, I feel like by the following week after that, I will finally be able to take a good hearty break, and I'm supposed to actually go up to Will's uncle's cabin the weekend of the 15th, and we're just gonna. I can't. Of course, the pain of when your day-to-day career is also one of your passions, and so when I decide I want to take a break from work, I still end up doing work-related things. So we're gonna throw up a black light and see what's out in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan in October. It'll actually be pretty exciting just to see some little like lepidopterans and midges and stuff, because it's still fun to identify those things. And Brandon really likes leps, so even if we got a bunch of little tiny brown moths at the light, will be pretty cool. We might try and do some fishing. I'm not exactly sure if we had a final decision on that, or if it's even a good time of year to fish for anything. But go look around for stuff and just breathe. I'm going to need to breathe a little bit by then. So let's see. Anything else you could talk about? Anything weird today? Oh, more bug related things. Bug that I will not be showing on the live stream. So I sent one Mr. Ty Randall. I don't, Ty, if you ever watched this, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I've been saying Randall. I think it sounds better than Randall. So I sent him a box of goodies, and he returned in kind with sending me a very good size Scolopendra galapagoensis orange form, and it's the second biggest centipede I've ever seen. The biggest I've ever seen was either Scolopendra gigantea or the same variety of Galapagoensis at Tinley one year, a fellow by the name of Mike Levins, who does a lot of presentations and bug shows and whatnot in the Chicago area. I'd have to ask him for his more particular information if anybody was interested in meeting him or hiring him or whatever. But he had an individual at the show just at his table. He wasn't selling. Maybe he was accepting offers that were crazy on it, but he had it at his table, and it was in a 10-gallon. And that centipede stretched from almost one side of the 10-gallon all the way to the other side. Like, I want to say that it was maybe only 2 to 4 inches from being the whole length of that 10-gallon. It was the largest centipede that I have ever seen in my entire life, and it was absolutely horrifying. And now I'm hoping I can raise mine to be like that and maybe pair them up one day. Chris Snyder asking for how to correct common mistakes in insect care. Removed some overly wet substrate and added a couple fistfuls of hardwood pellets. Good, bad. Yeah, that can be a good way to dry up some extra moisture. It's actually, I hadn't put 2 and 2 together that you could actually, wick up extra moisture by using hardwood pellets like that. But yeah, they really suck moisture up real fast. I have been using hardwood pellets for a lot of things. I mean, with all the beetles and whatnot, making not exactly flake soil. Though I did make some supposedly flake soil back in February, but making the white rock cultures. That is another thing. I inquired to a mycelium propagation company about whether or not they had any brown rot fungi species, having seen Cryptocarchus so many times and sort of seeing what they do well in and whatnot, thinking that the next stage would be propagating some brown rot, some sterilized brown rot fungus for them, because thinking there's something going on with cryptos and brown rot fungus, because it seems to be the types of logs that they're always found in. They're restricted to cool, semi-mountainous environments, and that's also brown rot fungi tend to have a temperate distribution like that. So yes, red rot and cuboidal rot, those are all the same group of fungus, I believe, versus the white rot fungi, which make that nice pulpy. I was just reading on this. I think, Chris, was it you or somebody else who dived into the differences between what's left behind by white rot and brown rot fungi? White rot seems easier if you add the supplements after the mycelium is well established, far less green mold. And I haven't even seen green mold be quite as much of an issue as I wish I knew the Latin on these different the molds that pop up. That would be opening a whole other can of worms entirely. I just know that the white rot species that I tend to use is Pleurotus, the oysters. But the brown rot leaves it. I think it takes more. It does a more thorough job of decomposing the wood than white rot fungi do. I think something about it with the lignin, and that's why it's brown instead of the color it is on the recently deceased trees of being whitish or yellowish. So, so yeah, I'm looking into that because it could be useful for those. And I think when I had kept glomerus before, they seem to prefer brown rot over white rot materials. So I'm curious if that's a missing piece here, because sometimes we overlook these really what things that should be obvious in different types of invertebrates for their husbandry. Sometimes we overlook them and overcomplicate things by also kind of undercomplicating them, like not realizing that it may be important if something feeds on white rot or brown rot. So yeah, I'm working that out and seeing if I can get that available. If I do make it available and it ends up being important for some things, then that will obviously be going up on Roach Crossing eventually. So Amanda asked, do you keep breed spiders? What do you think about the jumping spider craze? I mean, I'm a fan of the jumping spider craze since it brings me a lot of site traffic. But I've raised plenty of Regius, and currently the spider that one of the spiders that I am continuously raising, I could probably name the number of spiders I've successfully bred and raised on like two hands. Let's see. What's that? Alan, maybe you remember those little Tidiotis, was it? It's a West Coast genus of the kind of embery looking spiders, Tidiotis something, Shantzai maybe. So I've bred those before. I thought that I had bred the Tennis hibernalis, and then realized that no, it was just the random Agilinopsid that I caught in Huntsville that actually had babies in one of the containers. I keep all those containers together in the same area in the basement. Other spiders. A couple of widows. I used to do more with widows. The problem with widows and with a lot of other spiders, sometimes with bugs in general, I guess, is sometimes you get something that's really cool and a lot of people say is really cool. And so you put a lot of effort into raising it and making it available. And then the time comes where you have extras to make available for people to buy. And then you put them up, and then all of a sudden, nobody wants any of the things that you work so hard to produce a bunch of. So, or at least not at the price, or even not even a price thing. Just the people who want them just suddenly vanish from the face of the planet for whatever reasons. And with widows, they're like a weird type of work where it's like you can keep females alive for a long time. They'll just keep pumping out egg sacs, but then you have to raise all the babies, and you also have to make sure when you're working with the babies, if you actually want to raise a fair number to adulthood, not just do the battle royale, winner take all out of this sack. You gotta put attention into taking care of the babies and also separating them, and also when you go to open up the multi-baby enclosure, you have to not get babies all over your place of dwelling or wherever you are opening up the container. So yeah, let's see what other spiders. Disdera, I've messed around with those a couple times. I got babies out of I raised them a couple instars of a carpenter ant mimic, maybe back in like 2015 or something. It's a species I wouldn't mind. I actually really want to work with genus Sergiolis. It might be different now. There's a couple of small native nephosids in Michigan that have very tarantula-esque colors. They're very pretty. Kind of have to be in the right place at the right time in the spring to find them, though. But I wouldn't mind working with those. So, Jojo, did you caught a juvenile jumper or a juvenile widow this morning? And there's another spider, Hogna, Lenta maybe it was that I actually really liked raising Hogna. I might, that'd be something I do for fun, is raise some Hogna, because they are very fun to raise, and I really like pairing them because like the mating is just so like it's kind of graphic. And so yeah, maybe if I find a Hogna while I'm out and about wherever, I might catch it if it's a female and then raise it. Have I paired up Dolomedes before? No, I don't think I've paired up Dolomedes. So 205 pop off. That's it. That you're definitely a new viewer. Welcome. And Roach Crossing is my full-time job, actually. And I'm actually, there's a disconnect for me because I feel like every time I talk on the live stream or just in general, I'm always saying, "Oh yeah, I'm so busy. Oh yeah, I'm so busy." And I kind of figured people would be like, "Wow, Kyle's incessantly busy with all of these bugs. Like this must be his this has to be his full-time job. There's no way he could just like, oh yeah, I just did this all day, and oh yeah, and then I did this all day. Oh yeah, and then I did this." So Jojo, what type of widow did you catch? Is it widows, talking about Latrodectus it's a very chill vibe, because there's only a handful of like species it could be in the US, and there's also all those little like subtle color patterns. Like if you get the extreme southwest down near Mexico, you get some of those adult western Latrodectus hesperus that retain some of their juvenile coloration. And then the further north you get, it's like people are kind of shocked to hear that there's Latrodectus variolus in Michigan. And some people are like, oh, yeah, they're all over the place in certain places. I've only seen a variolus in Michigan once. It was in the demo shed at the U of M Dearborn, where I used to work and still go for various things. So I don't think Tennyson. Oh, Tennyson, I can answer some of your questions here while we're here. I don't think Lenta is particularly pretty. It's a good sizable wolf spider. I'm actually a big fan of like the sort of brown and tan or black and tan, come out ye black and tans color of a lot of things in general. You know, there's a lot of beauty in that sort of subtle mixture of nice earthy tones. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Lenta, so I raised those, bred them, paired them up a couple times. That would have been 2014 or 2015 when I was doing that. So again, I might do it again with another species, Carolinensis, Carolina. I can't remember. They split the genus too into other groups, but those are pretty spiders as well. What is that one white species of hogna? I'm not sure. Alan's favorite Latrodectus is L. variolus that live in the trees in Apalachicola. Yeah, I think that was my first time seeing variolus. Was actually in what is a state park that I constantly complain about wanting to go back to, but I can't remember the name of it right now. Torreya. I remember seeing them in Torreya everywhere up in the trees, and I thought, oh, I guess this is just where wild black widows live. And apparently, as you just said, it's more of a wherever's up with this Apalachicola population, as they like to hang out in trees for some reason. Tennyson question. Let us see. Crack open this email here. You're thinking about getting some glow spot roaches. Which species of glow spots best to start with? Are they able to escape a bin if it's not airtight? If there's a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch gap? The adults do have some sort of leverage power, especially the males of Leuci hermetica. So I mean, it's a good idea to have an escape-proof enclosure for anything that you're working with. But I think you could maybe be a little more lax with Leuci hermetica since it's just the adults that climb. So not sure exactly what sort of enclosure you had in mind either. 1/2 inch gap is a pretty big gap for keeping any sort of bug with. I would not feel very comfortable using any sort of enclosure that had a 1/2 inch gap in some capacity of its design. So Chris brings up that the toughest part of breeding wolf spiders is getting wolf and a spider. My brain didn't read ahead there. I just sort of started reading, but yeah, have I already told the story on here of the only time I've been bit by a spider? No, not the only time. It's the first time I've been bit by a spider. I've only really been bit by 2, 3 spiders in my life. And the first one, it was a little, I think it's Tigrosa, Rabidosa. I'm going to look this up. The very common small, no, it wasn't Rabidosa. Very common small wolf spider. I'm going to see if Pardosa. The only reason I know any of these Latins to any Pardosa must have been Pardosa maybe, is because Chuck Ford, who he hasn't popped up in the live stream ever, I don't think. He's been off globe trotting and other things, but we had gone on a couple of good collecting trips together in the past, and since he's a spider taxonomy expert, etc., I would always point out stuff, and me being a young grown but still younger Kyle was always asking what it was, and he would always be mumbling the genre to the things that we were finding. So I just remember Pardosa, Rabidosa, Tigrosa, etc. were all wolf spider genera. So, but anyways, I was maybe like between 6 and 10 years old, and I caught this Pardosa from the front yard, and I didn't have a container on me. It was a really big wolf spider. So I was like, okay, like I got it. I'm gonna go run to the garage and put it in a container. And I had it in my hand, and I ran all the way to the back of the yard to go in the garage to find a container. And just when I got into the garage and I was like looking for like my dad used to have little like plastic cups and stuff for keeping screws and whatnot in. And just as soon as I got to a suitable container, it bit me on the palm of my hand, and I opened my hand and like it fell to the ground and got away. But I'll never forget that because it was like, whoa, that kind of hurt. It was just it may have been a dry bite, but it just had very acute pain, and then it just went away. So let's see, catch up to the chat here. I'm getting quite talkative. What's the reason Cuck Fong are so expensive? First of all, they're Pseudoglomerus magnifica, so a lot of people really, really want them because they're very pretty. And they're also a pure locality, unlike some other magnifica or magnifica hybrids that have been floating around. According to TJ, there was somebody mixed up, and this is like, oh yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all because this is just literally what happens every day now. Or I guess has always happened every day. Somebody crossed their golden magnifica, or TJ said it might actually be a different species of Pseudoglomerus from southern China with the Vietnamese strain of magnifica, and then started distributing them. And perhaps they exhibited some hybrid or just outbreeding vigor. Maybe they are doing. I don't know. I don't keep track of that. I whenever I get new roaches, I go through a very small number of people who are a bit more cued in with things on a larger scale than I am. But anyway, so they're apparently the hybrids or cross locale stock does not retain the brilliant green coloration, or not nearly as consistently as the Cuck Fongs do. So that's why. So Amanda says, I want to try to raise some jumpers. It seems fun. Like you said, worry no one will be interested after all the work you do. Yeah, and it depends. TJ and I had a I mean, we're in the middle of a conversation, I suppose, on Discord, but earlier where I had mentioned that I have a bunch of I'm going to be releasing a bunch of more a bunch more hissing cockroach strains and locales and whatever, as some things have become available very soon. And so there's some people who a fair number of people who just want to be kept in the loop on some things. And sometimes somebody will message me once and say, hey, let me know. I want to be put on a wait list for this. I'll say, well, I don't really do wait lists, blah, blah. They'll message me again, a month later. Hey, is anything available? Say, oh, okay, this person's actually serious. And then, a third time, like, hey, just checking and say, all right, I'll put you on a wait list. I'll make a note somewhere. Again, I don't really have a formal wait list, but, I have some sticky notes on my desktop. I have some notes on in various places in the bug room, and mental notes, whatever. So, but I was talking about how, like, boy, I just sort of put up a group of these locality Gronfodorina portentosa, and at this price that has a donation to hissing cockroach conservation built into it, I'm already sold out. And TJ was sort of like, well, that kind of sucks because I sold out of my groups, but like I haven't really been having a lot of sales of those lately or something. So it really depends. Obviously, having a website really helps with stuff too. So, but with jumpers, yeah, having a website to move. Most people who want jumpers do not want 50 jumpers. They want 1 or 2, and they want a very specific color, want a very specific sex. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fine. And that's why I added the options to pick sex, etc. on the website. But then I also had to bring up the cost because I can't be fumbling around with jumping spiders all day when the little roach voices that live in my head says, Father, you have to feed us, Father. We need water and substrate changes. And you have to split us into other containers so that you can culture different varieties of us, Father. So I have to choose my battles. So, but I actually quite frequently, Les isn't in the Les isn't in the chat right now, but he bought some jumpers from me and ended up producing a group, and then he caught me at a time where I was low on jumpers, so he just messaged me and said, I have some available. Do you want to buy them or swap? And so that's what we ended up doing. So if you do end up producing some, a good idea to contact some retailers such as myself and see if we need any, and go from there. So because I oscillate from being like, oh yeah, I have plenty of jumpers available to getting a little low here. So Tennyson on his enclosure, maybe not half inch, but if I force it, I can fit the tip of my finger in between the lid and the lip of the tub. You should send me a picture of it. That makes it sound more secure than it originally seemed. So some egg says I got some bull jumper babies, 2 sacks, and I only raised one to second and started, it disappeared. Oh, only 1 sack or just one individual? So Amanda, I'm pretty sure I put you on the list and the little sticky note that oscillates on my desktop very frequently. The Beetle Guy. All right, the Beetle Guy. I know I haven't seen your name in here before, so welcome. And the spider beetles. Oh my gosh, I've had a couple of people over the years ask me about spider beetle care, and I laugh to myself every time because spider beetles are literally the easiest, short of throwing weed seeds outside, spider beetles are the easiest living thing to care for and breed, with only one little caveat in my experience. You can just throw them in a secure container full of dry dog food, and in 6 to 10 months you will just have an infestation of them in the enclosure. You don't have to water, you don't have to do really anything with them. They just do all the work themselves. So, but they're pretty tiny. The Mesium are one of the larger genre and species. I've collected spider beetles when fisting Aeronavega burrows, and I don't exactly have a game plan for how I want to breed the wild species because they probably need something more little different than the captive ones. And so a lot of the wild species that I collect on this past trip, I've just thrown in with my Aeronavega cultures because they were found together in the wild in the first place. So I just hope that they'll do something. So about once a year, I will, when there's just like gobs of adults, I will do a a dog food change where I will just take all or as many adults as I can catch in a reasonable amount of time. And since I have a piece of bark in with them, they usually crawl up onto the bark. So I will just take them all, freeze the substrate, kill any adults or larvae, or sell it or whatever if I take going to an expo or something. And then I'll just start all over again, put the piece of bark with all the adults on it back in the enclosure, and it starts the whole cycle all over again. So, but the only problem, again, everybody who's here constantly hears me complain about air humidity, moisture, blah, 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 is if your ambient air humidity is very high, you have a minimum ventilated container that you're keeping your spider beetle colony in, you are at very severe risk for having a grain mite infestation pop up. And out of all the grain pests that I keep, the ones that seem the least affected by grain mites in terms of if there is a grain mite problem and how they respond to it, if they all die or whatnot, are the spider beetles. They don't really seem to care, even if there happens to be a bloom of grain mites in the enclosure. So if you keep them dry, and the larvae will sort of live inside of the dog food pellets. If they're more humid, if the air humidity is higher, there's less ventilation in the container, you will see larvae crawling around or making just sort of living out of the food basically, and then they're a little bit easier to harvest if you need to use the larvae to feed anything. In the wild, they seem to just eat random detritus in the rodent burrows, kind of like the Aranavega. They may prefer intact seeds of things, or sort of a little bit chewed up seeds of things like mesquite seeds. It's possible they could be eating rodent poop. I wouldn't be surprised if the larvae would burrow into like a single like jackrabbit poop and sort of take up residence in there. So, but again, with all although I do really like them, I'm also pretty confident that anytime I go back to Arizona, I can find more of the wild spider beetles, and they're a lot smaller. And I would focus my efforts coming back on setting up things like the Aranavega, and so thus I didn't really try to give them their own independent effort. Amanda says, you know, of a micro-sized roach that doesn't climb or fly, we need them for our baby panthers, basically the size of a newborn dubia. The recommendation to use Paraplecta, aka Little Kenyans, that's a good recommendation. If you need something that's a little bit smaller, go with maybe Compsodies. Although honestly, I could see baby chameleons really liking. I could see them really liking some roaches that humans would not necessarily find the most fun to work with. For example, Blatella asahani and maybe Blatella vega both have insane potential as feeders. They're day active. They crawl all over the place. They breed like crazy. They're not. They're introduced in the United States, but they're not cold hardy, and they're not native. But pretty much everywhere that asahani could exist right now in the wild in the United States, they already do. So the downside is they look like German roaches. That's the downside, is the visual stigma, and also the fact that, you know, if you working with them, you will get some of them out in some capacity. If you're using them as feeders, you're going to have escapees from moving them from point A to point B. So this is just like working with like crickets or flies, I guess. You know, you're going to have escapees no matter what. But again, your escapees are going to look like German roaches, even though they're not, and they're not going to infest your house. So, but yeah, they make excellent feeders for chameleons because they're day active and they're. What does the boy want? Let's see what the boy wants. Put the beetles away. Get the boy. Well, come on in, Mr. Boy. You're coming in? No? Okay. Come on. Come in. Good boy. There you go. Hello, Mr. Boy. Oh. Let's tilt this down so we try to get a little bit of the boy in the imagery here. So yeah. So that's why I'm hoping that with Germans, there are a bunch of color forms that have popped up, and some that I've worked with, that I've acquired, some that I've been working on making myself. And so I'm hoping it's a numbers game with the Blatella sinai, that one day, if I have enough of them, I will just end up, a mutant will just pop up, and then it's like, there's my end. Like, okay, here's one that's red, or here's one that's black, or here's one that's bright yellow, or some difference, so that then people won't look at it and be like, okay, it's a German roach, you know. So let's see, catch up in the chat. Red runners, the little Kenyans. So there are no tiny roaches that other than Nocticola, but that's probably not a good idea because of the sort of semi-slower reproduction speed. What do you want? You want to go outside? You want to go outside? Come on, let's go outside. All right, we'll be back. You go outside? Okay. Yes, other than Nocticola, there are no tiny species that are both non-climbing and non-flying. Even with the Paraplecta, the little Kenyan adult males, they cannot fly, but they can climb. Compsognes, all life stages cannot fly and climb except for adult males, which are fully winged and can climb as well as fly. And pretty much all of the small ectobiids, like the Carablata, Neoblatella, Corsinura, etc., those can all both fly and climb, other than the Carablata, which cannot fly. So, is breeding Germans dangerous? So I would estimate I've lost about 15 German roaches into this house, and nothing has come of it. And if anybody's ever lived in an apartment building or gone anywhere that has an actual roach infestation, not just like Paraplaneta americana wandering up through the sewers or whatever, but an actual in-house infestation, that's got to be kind of a pretty gross house to have an infestation of especially German roaches. It also, in most Midwestern houses, it gets too dry during the winter time with furnace heat for them to really do well, unless they're under a sink or somewhere like that. It's very localized. So I actually don't really worry about having Germans. Actually, this is a good time. Let me show off some German roaches now that we're talking about it. So a fun fact that I'm going off on a little micro tangent here, but a fun fact that my friend Mike Underwood constantly brings up, because he does a lot of millipedes, he does some isopods. He's more of a livestock animal guy though, so he has a farm and he has chickens and emus and goats and a lot of things like that, horses, and he does a lot of stuff with or used to do a lot of stuff with like exotic birds, parrots and whatnot. But one of his things that he parrots to me a lot is he'll get on like little micro tangents about stuff, and one of the things that he always says is there are more breeds of domestic pigeon than there are all other breeds of all other domestic animals combined, and that has always stuck up here, because if you go and look up pigeon breeds, it's pretty the ice. Here I go on a rant. I'll get to the comments in a second. The isopod people, you have 20 different things for the same thing, and we gotta call it all orange, and we gotta call it all this, and this is that. Whoops, sorry, I didn't prove out. You look at pigeon people where lines are meticulously tracked, and two things could look almost identical except for like one different trait, and the history for the lines could be completely different. One could be a bomb-carrying pigeon that was developed somewhere in southern Italy, and the other one could be something that was developed in northwestern France and is a hundreds-year-old breed or something like that. And so anyways, just some perspective on these sort of things. So I was going to show off a German here. Let's see. So how that tied into what I was trying to get to is that I think I have more breeds, more strains of German roaches than I do of any other roach. Not combined, though. I'm not quite at pigeon levels of breed diversification, but I have black, I have chocolate, I have amber, I have V5101, I have Alexandria, I have a bunch, and I have some project bins where I'm pulling some things out of. Unfortunately, there's a website that has a bunch of really, really just absolutely sick German roach varieties on it, like red eyes, sepia eyes, white eyes, crinkle wings, hemolymph bubble wings. All this stuff is really, really cool. When I first got into roaches, I had tried to contact them to get some of those strains, and it got me nowhere. I found out from Dr. Appel at Auburn that the person who managed, created, whatever, all those lines, actually, they were no longer in operation. The lab that they worked for didn't bother to continue maintaining any of those lines, so they're all pretty much gone, unless there's any independent universities that are maintaining them. But this is my lovely V5 101. I have no idea what V5 101 actually means. All I know is that this strain was kindly given to me by an academic source, and likely has quite a few pesticide resistances. So at some point, I will do further sleuthing to figure out what this V5 101 means. So, but the main reason that I got them was not because they're resistant to a billion different pesticides or whatever, but there are some individuals that either have a Serratia infection, which is not very common in ectobiids, or they have some sort of genetic condition that turns them a lighter color. And so I wanted to work with that and see if it was Serratia, if it was a genetic thing. And so I'm working on crossing them into some lines. So anyways, so German cockroach stream, everyone. Here you get to see the elusive first public appearance of the Botella germanica V5101 strain. Maybe it'll be infamous one day. Maybe. Who knows for what, though. So... so yeah, there's my German roach tangent, and I got to show bugs, which is very important apparently, even though the people who usually say show bugs don't seem to be here right now. So let me scroll up and catch up here. Michael Hare, good to see you. I don't think I've seen you in here in a while, so it's good to see you again. You got some Cotinus metabolus, some L2 larvae. In my experience, and I've only raised one generation of, I just produced, I have my F1 generation of captive born and bred Cotinus mutabolus right now. And in my experience, it takes about a year it's surprisingly slow. You could probably speed up with temperature manipulation, some other stuff. But so from the adults that I brought back in September of last year that then laid eggs that hatched into larvae, the larvae pupated over the winter, started eclosing. I think actually they didn't actually start eclosing. I got impatient and took them out of their pupal cells, so I kind of forced them to eclose around March or April, and they were ovipositing very shortly after that. So that's from egg to adult. Let's see, this is October, November, December, January, February, March. About 6 months from egg to adult. And then, but I guess, why aren't these larvae growing? I had collected large larvae before. So they were not. Brain needs to think. They were larvae before. Oh, so 6 months from third instar larva to adult. And then, so the larvae that I have now are third instar, should be starting to be looking to pupate very soon. So it seems to still work out to about a year. I bet you could tighten it up to about 8 months with some skill. So, but as pupae, that puts it at about the 3-4 months as pupae, I guess. So, hello, Nikki. Good to see you again, too. Alan says, God, that reminds me I need to collect some Botella Vega when I'm in Dolphin Island next weekend. Can't you just get some from the lab, Alan? Did you guys lose your colony? Because if you guys lost your colony, the ones that you guys gave me are actually doing really well. This is the best Botella Vega colony has ever done for me, actually. And I did take Dr. Appel's advice, and I gave them a little salt dish. They don't seem to touch it at all, so maybe I just got all the other conditions perfect, and that actually didn't matter, but maybe. I'm going to look up the distribution for Blatella vega now, because Dr. Appel had mentioned that they were seen in agricultural fields eating like salt crystals from fertilizer or something like that. So I'm going to see if there's. It would be interesting if their distribution was there's something going on with salts and stuff like that. Nothing that suggests a coastal distribution. Boy, there's reports from the Carolinas now. So I don't know. But they're finally breeding like Blatella should, and so I'm happy about that. Chris says mice throw a mutation, something like 1 in 250,000, maybe 10% of those are deemed desirable by the hobby figure. I'm breeding 2.5 million roaches for an interesting mutation. I've probably raised about over 2.5 million lobster roaches, Nophetus cinerea, and I have yet to detect the mutation in them. I was slowly upbreeding them for size for some time, and but I haven't seen anything. Nothing stark popped up as I would have hoped it to. So, some egg says, I've never seen a roach in a building where I live, but I see Germans in my university greenhouse where it is very wet. Yeah, moisture is a big thing for a lot of roaches. Like you think of like a crappy apartment or an old motel where there's like a fridge that never gets cleaned, and where people are like occasionally storing beverages, and where there's like these spills and sticky stuff on the sides of it. It's like that has enough moisture they can sort of graze off of it. And in the summertime they don't need as much direct drinkable water because of the air humidity. So Chris Snyder says pigeons are freaking awesome. Well, I have news for you, Chris. On one of my acquisitions on Sunday, and one of the reasons I went to go see Mike was I was picking up a pair of giant runt pigeons that he had gotten from me at a livestock auction. So now I have a pair of giant runt pigeons, and currently am on a wait list / discussion list for parlor rollers. And so I think I can see myself maybe keeping like 3-ish varieties of pigeons. They're very easy. Eventually just build big outdoor roost thingies for them when I move. But for now, just gonna keep a couple of them. And the last one, I kind of like the idea of homing pigeons, so maybe I'd get something like that. Or if you got giant runs, which are gigantic, and then see if there's anything that's ridiculously tiny, like sparrow size. I would be surprised if they haven't gotten something quite small. Periplaneta, some egg says I've seen a pronotum of Periplaneta americana in a class building, though. Yeah, I think somebody sent me a picture of a German roach from the Castle College of Arts, Sciences, and Letters building at U of M Dearborn. It seems most likely that it probably hitchhiked with a student from their apartment or from their home. Jojo, actually, my Periplaneta americana protocols are less strict than they are for my Blatella. They're in 10 gallons with the gasket seal and with a mesh underlayment, and of course with roach no crossing barrier. But Periplaneta americana are surprisingly easy to contain because the first, I think it's up to the 4th instar, the nymphs cannot climb. So that's a filter right away that, you're not going to have little tiny babies making it to the top because they physically can't. And then for sizes larger than that, typical window screening or even larger can keep them contained. So, but some of my very special lines of Americana I do have in hexagons, which are completely escape-proof brass microscreen ports on the sides for ventilation, and then a heat-sealed lid that snaps on and off to prevent anything from getting in or out. And that would be for things like the Mile Zero that I have from Key Largo, Periplaneta americana, the Baldy Bear strain, which Alan gave me to work with. I have both. I don't know if it's proving out, Alan, actually. I have noticed some weird pronotums pop up in the F1, but I don't know if that original weird male is actually heritable. But what I did do was I took some immature females from that enclosure and isolated them, and then I took them and put them in with that original male who's still alive. Also, Paraplaneta americana live a long time. I wouldn't be surprised if they could live to 3 years or even longer than that. It's actually pretty crazy how durable and long-lived they can be. So, and then a recent acquisition was, I won't say who, but a certain somebody got me some American roaches from the Pearl Harbor World War II memorial statue location. So I now have some Pearl Harbor Paraplaneta americana, and I really want some from like Brooklyn or New York. Some are very stereotypical. I would really like to get them. There are subtle differences in the patterning and coloration on the different localities of them. They're very subtle. You do notice it if you see enough of them, but there's still so much variation in it that it doesn't seem to be extremely significant, but it's noticeable. So killed off all my Paraplaneta australis Australacii by the simple expedient of letting them chew out of the screen, escape, and typically dying somewhere very visible. Yeah, that's a sign your air humidity is real low if you have roaches that get out and then they just desiccate before they can get too far. Do you think it would be feasible to keep Germans in 32-ounce Dells? So do you mean 16-ounce deli cups? Because I used to think that 16 ounces were 32 ounces, but funny you should ask that. So this is a proving container for this amber strain. So I probably picked a good pair and now have to do another subsequent round of selection for it looks like there's probably some good results in here in terms of coloration that I was going for. I wish I could pick it up on camera, but we're not to that level of technology yet. Eventually we'll be there. I promise you all. Maybe take 2 years, but we'll get there to where I can put something off to the side here and have a little stream insert that shows it off. So, but yeah, you can culture them very easily in these. The only problem is the frass and the dead bodies tend to dry up. Tend to pile up very, very quickly. So, you're going to be looking at changing it out sooner than later than if they were in a larger enclosure, maybe with a cleanup crew. But it can be done. It's very economical too, and of course, pretty close to being escape-proof just by design, being so small. So, Alan, do you remember what strain of Vega I got from you guys? Because I can't remember. Did I label it? I think I labeled it as Dolphin Island, but that's what I have on there. But was that actually the strain that I got? So, okay, yeah. So I have those then. So if you need them, I can send you some, so you don't have to go there. But just keep that in mind. Any information about keeping Devil's Coach Horse beetles, specifically Ocypus olens? I can't find my research about them, and they seem awesome. So I've never bred them. I have bred 2 other larger rove beetles intentionally. I bred tons of small rove beetles unintentionally because, again, I have like the greenhouse rove beetles that go after the fungus gnats, and then every once in a while I get cultures of other small rove beetles that pop up in enclosures, presumably feeding on fungus gnats or springtails or fungi or whatever. But I have bred 2 larger ones, those being my favorite rove beetle, second favorite, I guess my favorite, Platydracus maculosus, which is a very, very large North American native rove beetle. Really, really cool looking. It's got this nice sort of shiny, glistening look, very velvety, glistening. And the other one, I remember the Latin, the common name is hairy rove beetle, Creophilus maxillosus, the hairy rove beetle. I bred those as well too. The thing with rove beetles is that they eat so much, and they will cannibalize each other at any stage, basically, to raise the I'm going to leave that tab up so that I can say the Latin until I remember it. To raise the Creophilus maxillosus, the hairy road beetles. And this was at a weird time. This is at such a weird time in my life. I believe it was 2010 or 2011 when I went through my rove and carrion beetle phase and was breeding and trying to work with as many of those as possible. I don't know how I got away with that in my parents' house because I was feeding them dead stuff and it made the bug room smell awful. But so I fed them pre-killed roaches, and every time the female would lay an egg, I had to remove the egg right away, otherwise she would eat it. So I would have to check the cup every day. I tried raising larvae together, can't do it. They just eat each other. Anytime they go to molt, they'll eat each other. They can't pupate with each other either. They'll eat each other. So you have to raise everything individually. You have to make sure they have enough of their food available, pre-killed stuff. I'm not sure if they will hunt. I never really checked to see if they would hunt small roaches. That would be very helpful. But it was just easier to, instead of having to add a couple roaches every day, to just pre-kill something, put it in there, and let it hollow it out. So Ocypus is very common, and I found them in the middle of winter because they overwinter as adults here. So I would imagine they're not very difficult to breed if they're kept thoroughly moist, and you give, if you find a pair and then you do my strategy of, just leave a pre-killed feeder insect in with them and then just pull eggs incessantly as you find them. You could try raising them communally, but I'm not sure how far you get with that. And they may be more predatory than the hairy road beetles are, because the hairy road beetles tend to go to carrion. They probably eat the carrion and the fly larvae and stuff that's on the carrion. Platydracus is free living, so the larva is actually actively predating stuff. And fortunately for me, Platydracus maculosus is very common in my backyard. I actually caught a group of about 6 of them that I now have in my fridge to cool for the winter, and then I'll probably pull them out in December and see if I can get some larvae nice and early. They'd be so fun. So Michael Hare says, also beetle guide pigeon crossing. Yes, many different crossings. Ontholestes singulatus. Let's see. Ontholestes. So Ontholestes, here's the thing to me about Ontholestes is, to me, it looks like a bastardized Platydracus maculosus. They're not as long as Platydracus maculosus, but they look almost identical. And to me, they just look like they're just not as they're more like bulldoggy than Platydracus. Like, they've got those weird, big, huge eyes, versus the Platydracus look really cute. Like, they got little tiny eyes. They got a nice, sort of blocky head, and then you got the Ontholestes, just this little alien-looking thing that looks like it's copycatting maculosus. Anyways, that's my hot take on the two of them. I've found Ontholestes singulatus, I think, once or twice at my cousin's house in her fly bait track around her barn. I would imagine Ontholestes are probably similar to the hairy road beetle, I just forgot the Latin again. I'm horrible. Creophilus maxillosus. I would think that they're more similar to wild habits than they are to Platydracus in that respect. Hundreds of Curious, I didn't know you had tons and tons of pigeons. Yeah, I just like the homing pigeon thing for the meme of it, but also, if you have birds that you like and you use them to home, you run the very real risk of having them eaten by hawks or by literally anything on the way back. And that is something where it's okay, I have homing pigeons. I would want to have 20 homing pigeons in a colony before I even thought maybe I'll use this one to, let it to send a message to myself or whatever. So Yeah, the runs have been pretty cool though. Eric Christensen, I don't think I've seen you here before, so if not, welcome. Keeping German or American roaches require confidence and bravery. My other half would be displeased. If you have good husbandry protocol, such as this, the risk is very negligible in terms of things getting out and causing any sort of problems. It's all in the infrastructure of getting things set up. You can't really you can't put in a very crappy effort to doing it. And yes, Chris, thank you for bringing up that Paraplaneta can chew through fiberglass window screen. Always use metal screen. Always use metal screen for ports and holes and stuff in enclosures. I have my not muslin, the nylon mesh or whatever that I have is my underlayment on a lot of enclosures. But because I also have my barriers and stuff, the roaches are not often getting up there and trying to chew through it. It's the last thing that they ever do. If they were starving, they might do that. But you do not use fiberglass window screen for screens and ports. Go with aluminum or brass. You gotta go with metal. The thing I've seen I think it was Eublaberus posticus and probably Gromphidorina will over time nibble away at aluminum screening. Never seems to be enough. I think maybe they're just taking off the outer coating of it. Maybe they coat it with something special or something, but they will polish it. There we go. That's what I'm looking to say. They will polish aluminum window screening over time if they're hungry, just like they'll eat away at hot glue on different ports. Hi, Kim. Good to see you. Sorry it took me a while to see your comment. It's been a very talkative chat today, and I love it. Going to Dolphin Island for other reasons. All right. Other unrelated Blatella reasons. Some egg says I had some cocoa acquired in my dubia and I made the humidity too high. Now I have a forward flying physician and declining dubia population. Yes. So you may notice, and show of hands, how many people have read my cockroach care guide? I do not use pure coconut fiber for a lot of things. I'm going to go in here and triple check before I sound like a complete idiot if I contradict myself, which I don't think I do because I should be very clear about this. But pure coconut fiber is not. Yeah, here we go. So I say most species will thrive on coconut fiber alone, but I use my substrate mix of different organic materials, particle size, good mulch is appreciated, help aerate the substrate, blah, 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 aerating the substrates, gradient of substrate moisture. I didn't make any notes on here of hissers, which I probably should have. This is another thing I wanted to talk with the chat about is the roach care guide, but basically is I do use additional stuff in all of my enclosures, the mulches and coconut croutons, sphagnum moss, depends on how much I care about the species I'm putting stuff into. But basically some roaches, they gunk up their tarsi if they walk on just coconut fiber. And over time, the substrate in a lot of bins will just be turned into sort of just a topsoil, basically, as frass is building up and the roaches are tunneling and chewing on things. So, where was I going with this? But something about fresher coconut fiber, especially with hissers, it seems to get into their tarsi and it annoys them. And some people who've had problems with hissers have talked to me. I've been like, okay, put more mulch in, put more of this in, not just, your bark pieces and whatnot. You got to have something so when they go to crawl around in other places or they go to get their food, they don't have to walk directly on the coconut fiber. The coconut fiber is more for holding moisture and creating moisture gradients. So what dubia can also take it drier than pretty much any other cockroach. It is the reason they are not even the best feeder cockroach. The reason dubias have become so popular is because they tolerate crazy amounts of dryness, and most people keep their roaches insanely dry, bare egg cartons and whatnot. And so that's why, is because pretty much anybody, if you have no experience keeping roaches or any sort of insects, you can keep dubias and you're not going to lose your colony with the bare minimum effort. Or even if you bought a bunch of them, thinking you were going to start a colony, even if conditions are absolutely awful, it doesn't seem as awful because they don't just drop dead like other roaches would under the same conditions. So the beetle guy, how do you breed them without cannibalism? You have to eventually put male and female rows together. That's the thing, is you have to eventually give them an opportunity to pair up either in a separate container. I think that the adults have some more built-in behaviors that prevent that, and allowing them to get away from each other is a good idea too. So having a larger pairing enclosure, doesn't have to be huge, like a larger deli cup or something. So Michael Hare, I know the Ontholestes have the gold butt, but Platydracus maculosus also have the gold butt. If you look, it's about as observable as it is in Ontholestes. I think if you saw Platydracus maculosus in person, the larger size and the more cute body type would be more appealing to you. Mostly when they are very young and inexperienced, Chris says, with regards to losing pigeons to hawks. So, safe. Kim has Surinam's spilling. I took care of my last holdout. So I used to, before I locked up my Surinams and tightened all my protocol, I would get problems with Surinams and random bins occasionally. I was always smart enough to keep other Pycnoscelis in the 100% escape proof / entry proof hexagons, and then finally found that I could use this muslin technique and it keeps Surinams and other Pycnoscelis contained. But I found last week my last unknown infestation of Pycnoscelis surinamensis, and it was in with my Blabberus colossius Panama. And I went in there to look for nymphs because, like, oh boy, I can offer some colossius at the auction. This will be great. So I went into that enclosure to look to see how the colony was doing and really peek around, because most times even monthly maintenance is just, all right, they're alive, throw in the food, and we're good, on to the next bin. And so I dug through the substrate, and oh boy, lots of babies, and oh boy, it's a lot of Surinams. So that was a holdover from before I'd done this, and clearly I had not sterilized the wood or whatever for that enclosure well enough going into rehousing them into that container. So that was taken care of very swiftly, and so we'll see if this is an early announcement of victory, but pretty sure that there were no more problems, no more unknown Suriname problems in the house. And again, that was a bin that had eluded my attention in that capacity for some time. So Tennyson asks, I'm back. I was wondering, are there any guidelines or anything for the Bugapalooza this weekend? Tennyson, you can find that information posted on the blog post page. If you pull up my roachcrossing.com and go to the blog section, which is on a computer, you can see it along the left-hand side. It should say Bugapalooza auction details. And if that for some reason isn't viewable, if you go to my YouTube channel and look at the scheduled live streams and look at the description on each of the live streams has the rules and whatnot for them. So Gromphidorina have eaten styrofoam egg cartons from me, says Chris Snyder. Not nearly as much as mealworms, though. Mealworms can digest styrofoam. And you know what? I have a suspicion that roaches can, too. Doesn't mean they like to eat it, but I'm pretty sure that they can do. They have such a complex complex gut microbiome. I mean, a lot of invertebrates do, but I've had my fair share of colonies. I remember I was using styrofoam cups to give things food at one point. This is ancient history, and it was only for a couple of containers. But I remember you Blabberus eating through those styrofoam cups pretty eagerly. So decomposed egg cartons and frass. Some eggs, you are always welcome to send me a picture of your dubia colony, the whole thing with lid, with fixins, etc. And I can eyeball it and see if I have any suggestions. My dubia are in a 10-gallon tank, or at least I only had one colony of Laptica dubia. I keep around because it's another roach species. Occasionally get some orders for them. And of course, because they're actually taken care of properly, they get larger than pet store dubia. You can say pet store dubia now because you can find them in pet stores. But they're on about 1.5 inches of substrate that has been degraded into basically just cypress mulch on top of a powdery coconut fiber-like material. There's several tens of thousands of Alphatobius diaperinus lesser mealworm beetles in there. And I throw in handfuls of food on the dry end, this last time, it's been a month since I last did roach husbandry, on the dry end, and chunks of my fruits and veggies for the week. And that's it. And they produce all that I've needed out of that colony. And again, they just insanely dry tolerance. They are better at enduring dryness than Arenovega, and I would say that they're up there with Gronfodorina for that ability as well. So they're tough cookies. So Michael Hare says, sorry to keep bugging you, pun intended, of course, but my G-port noses seem to have a lot of mites covering their faces into the crevices of legs. Let's see if anybody else here has answered this already, because it's one of those things that a lot of roach people like to jump on to tell people about. So Gronfodorina and Princessia have commensal mites. I believe they were once called Gronfodora lilaps schaefferi. Now they've been reclassified or condensed into Androlilaps schaefferi. So they are a commensal. It has been proposed mutualistic or beneficial mite to the hissers, and they are so adapted to living on their hosts that they actually do not recognize standard water as something that they can drink. They will only take moisture from hissing cockroach saliva. And so sometimes their numbers go up in colonies, sometimes they go down. In my experience, I find them mostly associated with bins that are very dry. Or it could also be that when bins are extremely dry, they spend less time roaming around off of the roaches and more time up on the roaches to conserve moisture. And that's when you would notice there being a lot of them versus when they're crawling around in the enclosure. So, but the answer is they're completely natural. They're not harming the roaches, and it has been proposed that they're actually beneficial as they're eating scraps of food that are getting stuck on the roaches, as well as grooming the roaches and preventing fungi, some of which can cause allergic reactions in humans, from growing or from sticking around. So they're actually a good thing to see. And no, that's fine. It's one of those things that when I started keeping roaches, that information was, I feel like, one of the first things that a lot of people learned about keeping hissing roaches, other than the fact that they hiss. It was one of those, oh yeah, they have mites. Oh yeah, they all have mites. And I was just like, oh, they have mites, okay, mites, they're fine. That's cool. And it seemed like a lot of people now are just mites, just anywhere with things, probably because of, people having bad experiences with grain mites and things like that over time. So some egg says, do you have to PayPal to purchase items won in auctions? I'm thinking maybe just start over with the dubias in a fresh bin. Yeah, that's a good plan. If things are really screwed, just start over in a new bin. And again, I do use Alphatobius in my dubia bin, and the two of them are like made for each other. The dubia actually hang out in drier sections than the Alphatobius do, and even the moistest sections with Alphatobius, they don't seem to annoy the dubias with their tunneling and whatnot. So that might be something you want to look into. And yes, it is listed in the guidelines and rules for the auction, but the sales will be through PayPal. I would definitely, everybody who participates, you must read. Make sure you read the description and are aware of everything. So there's not really any gotchas there, but I am anticipating that there could be some tense moments where I, request something for a giveaway or something like that. Like, give me the Latin name for this or blah, blah, blah. And somebody might type things in all lowercase or have a spelling error or something like that. And it's very to the point. Or even putting bids. I have a clause in there about making sure you put a period after every number written. This is to make sure there's no wiggle room for, oh, actually, I'm sorry, I meant to type in this, or the period is the end of things. It helps to streamline things, helps to streamline the communication and make sure there's no misunderstandings and whatnot. So, Chairman BK, I think you're new too. Welcome if you are. Best feeder roaches other than dubias. So it depends on what you're feeding. I have been using for a lot of smaller things, for jumpers, for mantids, pallid roaches, Phytalia pallida. They have been a real powerhouse for me, and I rely very heavily on that colony for a lot of things. Even though they're a climbing species, sometimes you want that. You don't want a small species. Oh, well, I want something that doesn't climb and it doesn't fly, but then you go to put in the enclosure and then it burrows or it stays out of the way of where your animal is hanging out. Versus something like these Phytalia, it's great. They crawl right up to the mantids. They're very easy for them to catch. They're very chunky roaches, and they're the perfect size. A lot of stuff they're very appealing to a lot of things. Scaling up in size, Shelfredella lateralis. Apparently people really need more lateralis. I'm working on upping my production, but apparently there aren't a lot of lateralis suppliers around anymore. And Paraplaneta are surprisingly really good feeders too. And I have used those for numerous things, mantids to geckos and whatnot. Scaling up even more in size, you get into Blabris like Fusca or Cia peruvianus, which are excellent larger feeder roaches that are relatively quick breeding and just good all around. Lobster roaches have also kind of fallen out of favor. I could see why some situations you wouldn't use lobster roaches because they, unlike the pallids, which tend to go straight up, the lobster roaches tend to burrow in a little bit. But those colonies, excellent for tarantulas, especially if you pre-kill things or you just, you pop the head capsule, and so that the roach will just sort of like flip around the enclosure or whatnot. And a lot of the Eublabrus are really good for larger lizards and things like that. Eublabrus distanti, Biolii, etc. So, loss of vivarium to Surinams. My Matt has missed one. Eric Christensen, maybe you're new as well. If so, welcome. A lot of new people popping up possibly today. So welcome, everybody. Yeah, and the other thing about Surinams is it's not just that they can wiggle their way in from some other cultures of things, but on live plants too. They're very common stowaway on live plants from Florida plant farms and into vivariums and plant propagation places. So yes, so recently I posted in here how excited I was that my history was reading well. The next day my wife found a nymph wandering around the house. Oops. Yep, I gotta tighten up those containment protocols. Use some muslin, some critter keepers, use some gasketed 10-gallon lids, etc. Which again, I do hope to start getting some of these available. I mean, people can make them themselves, but I just finding a price point that is good for you guys buying gear, and for me taking the time to make gear. And with things like the lids, is $15 to buy all the supplemental supplies, etc. Sometimes it's easier for people to just do it themselves. But dang, good to know. If you can't tell that, I'm a total noob when it comes to roaches. Test and check the rules. People under 18 can't participate. That is, being over 18 makes things a lot legally easier in a lot of departments. For example, this was maybe like a year ago or something, but I had somebody who was under 18 who ended up using their parents' credit card information and whatnot to purchase some things. There's a whole ordeal with working that out, and so it's just easier for the stream to be accessible since it's actually auctioning and bidding on things for people who are over 18. Eric Christensen told me that the roach that I found wasn't mine. It must have come from outside. Uh, the funny thing is, when I find bugs out in my house, the majority of the time they're things that come from outside. I was sitting with my girlfriend at some point. I was sitting and watching something on the couch in the living room, and something big flew across the room and towards the screen. And I was just like, "Oh boy, what got out now?" And I went and caught it. It was a masked assassin. It was a Reduvius personatus, which is just something that lives wild in my house and garage. It's not something that I actively culture, other than the other ones that I cultured and sent to you, Alan. But it's they live in the garage, they live around the foundation of the house, and so it just pops up. It'll be February and the marmorated stink bugs will start waking up and they'll start flying around the house. So how does poor air quality affect inverts? I have been curious about this for a while. What do you mean by poor air quality? The deal depends on what you mean by poor air. Some eggs asking the question for me. They're not really affected to the extent of our knowledge by crappy air, considering their oxygen requirements are much lower than ours. And same with, again, lack of CO2. A lot of them are quite okay in anoxic environments, but not forever though. So it depends on the temperature. If it's warm, they're going to be respiring a lot, and they can be done in very quickly. And I hear the boy barking. I think I'm gonna go get Victor, so I'll be right back. Oh, oof, my legs. Oh, silly boy. Silly boy. All right, let's see. What's happened during chair time? Um, do any of y'all have experience with assassin bugs? I will point assassin bug people to assassin bug expert Mr. Alan John here. What do you think the best roaches for people are for eating? Oh boy, I'll go off on a tangent on that in 1 second. Alan, I'm not sure how many Reduvius were in there. I just remember seeing that there were nymphs after eggs that the female had laid had hatched, and I just kept putting in fruit flies and springtails to try and raise them up. So, uh, some eggs and chain. I have actually eaten cockroaches before. I ate distant eye. I grilled them. I took some adults. I grilled them. I coated them in barbecue sauce, and I tried to eat them, and they tasted roachy, and it was not good. It was not a fun experience at all. And I got really sleepy after eating them, so I'm wondering if maybe I was allergic to insect protein or something like that, because that's happened with me before when I've eaten things that I'm allergic to, like duck eggs or undercooked eggs, raw eggs used in things. Give me a very bad allergic reaction. Um, so no, it was not good. It was not good at all. I'm curious if eating a freshly molted one might be a different experience. I'm willing to try that. I have had, however, so bad thing for potentially for people looking at uh, roaches as future insect protein. Actually, that's another thing. This big push for farming bugs and stuff like that. Have to ask ourselves if people are actually allergic to some of these things, because allergies to insect proteins is one of the most common allergies. So, flip side though, that is interesting. I ate a Blabberus, either Atropos or Discoidalis ooth once. So there's a female that I think I picked her up and she dropped her ooth or something like that. Whatever, something happened, she dropped her ooth. And I was like, it's like a chicken egg, basically. It's just like laying an egg, And so I tried it and it was actually delicious. It had a very buttery consistency, buttery flavor, very, very rich, full flavor. So I could get behind that, and I didn't have any sort of notable reaction or anything like that to that. I was actually, it's enough where I'm like, I kind of would want this again. This is, this could be like a gourmet sort of dish thing. It was actually really, really good. So it's probably because it's mostly fat that's in there for the eggs to get to spur off the development. Very fatty. So, but also deep frying things could be different, or cooking them at a high enough temperature that certain proteins denature. So I could see, using something like lobster roaches and deep frying them, or really, really cooking the heck out of them. The Messi's works better for eating people than roaches. But the thing with the using insects, and again, the got to watch out for people with allergies to certain things. And then, of course, the big question, and the one that I'm all too familiar with, is most of the places where you're raising or can raise things like this are temperate. And for 6 months out of the year, you cannot rely on ambient heat to properly raise large numbers of these different insects. And so, where do we draw the line, and where do the economics of the environmental benefits and whatnot even out between raising cattle and hoof stock that can be kept in a barn through the winter that's unheated and unmanaged and whatnot, and having a barn full of bugs that you intend to, raise organically and if efficiently, feed efficient conversion, etc., when you're dumping tons and tons of electricity or natural gas into heating the building? Where are the lines for these economies of scale with this sort of stuff? Because even in the summer, this summer, since unlike any summer that I can remember before, and as some of you can attest to, actually, perhaps having known me for a while, this is the first summer in a long time that I actually worked the whole summer. There usually summers I I have had another job to deal with, or where I just didn't work as much because I was unmotivated, or I was distracted by the follies of youth and blah blah blah. This is actually the first summer that I have completely worked all through the summer, other than going on collecting trips. I still consider that work. So, but in my as such, I left everything was going full speed. All my lights, I didn't turn off any lights over the summer. I think I cut down the heaters because I didn't need to have the usual number going. But my electric bill was $400 last month. And during the winter, I wouldn't be surprised if I at some point during this winter ended up with a $600 electric bill. So yeah, that's for heating my less than thousand, probably like 800 square foot bug basement. So, is that worth it to raise feeder bugs through the winter or something like that? I don't know. So, Tiernan BK, what shelves are the best for keeping inverts on? I am looking to redesign my bug room to fit as many as I can. I love these wire metal racks. I can't sing enough praises about them. I will say, though, and this is something I've learned over time, and something I will be taking into account when I move, most likely, but all the models I have do not have wheels. I think with my desire to keep things very orderly and cleanly, it will be better for me to get models that do have wheels when I move to the next building. But otherwise, I can't complain about these. You can adjust the size. They're heat proof. They hold a lot of weight. I have one that has a bunch of aquariums on it in the basement in the bug room, and it holds up just fine. So, and they really help you maximize your usage of the space that you have. So, I don't have a particular recommendation for a brand. There's several different brands of them. You can get them at Walmart. You can get them off Amazon. You can get them off Target, or get them at Target. I've seen them at quite a few places. The only thing is, you got to keep an eye on the dimensions if you're trying to standardize everything. I've sort of given up on getting all the exact same rack because they seem to change them every year. Some of it seems to be them cutting corners of supplies. Like, sometimes I've gotten these as, oh, wow, these are like 3 inches shorter front to back than the last model that I got, all this, whatever's going on in the world. But otherwise, even on the ones that are sort of the reduced size, etc. models, they're still really quality products and work very well. So, yeah, Chris, that's the thing, is it's very common knowledge in ecology that small organisms, and this applies to things that have the same internal body strategy of, either they're endothermic or exothermic, but small endothermic animals per gram of body mass need, I want to say it's an exponential difference in the amount of calories they need just to sustain themselves versus larger things. So what it's saying is, basically, if you have one organism that's 100 grams, and you have 100 organisms that are 1 gram each, all other factors considered, the 101 gram organisms will ultimately need vastly more resources than the 100 gram organism will, per unit of time. And this is, has to do with the efficiency of the bodily systems and a lot of other things that I am not as versed on as I really should be. So, but if there's some news reports and whatnot of things like when there's locust swarms in places, and basically, I think it's, I have it saved somewhere because I thought it was very interesting. But farmers complain because locusts, in this case, they were talking about Melanopolis differentialis, some outbreak in Texas is a couple of years ago. Well, they were talking about how they will eat a swarm of locusts of the same mass as a longhorn steer or something like that will eat 50 times more vegetation or 50 times more feed than the steer will. And again, that's, natural cycles like that. They're not around in the winter. We have North America, we get our winter over much of North America. And so it's like, again, how would you keep production up through the winter? Do you do a seasonal production? How do you, there's just so many questions that I have as far as the viability of things versus, conventional agriculture. But, maybe we'll do a live stream on that sort of thing. So, but if anybody knows otherwise, let me know, because it's something that I think about constantly. Like, I raise bugs for a living, and they eat a lot, and it takes a lot of energy, to go into raising them on this sort of scale. How could this be feasible, for a feeding humanity type, approach? This general sort of cynicism or criticism that I have. So, Beetle guy's heading out, so I'll see. Maybe I'll be back before the end of the stream. Maybe, we're going on 2 hours. It's looking like a pretty good stream. I do have some other things I need to do tonight, and I would like to actually eat some food. So, bugs are on the second story where it's consistently 4 degrees warmer, says some eggs. I actually end up with a very low, and this is something I have to look into for the next building, is whether I'm going to heat it with electricity or with gas. I think it probably makes more sense to heat it with natural gas and have some backup plans. But my natural gas bill is usually really low even in the winter, because all the heat from the bug room rises upwards into the living space. So it usually stays quite toasty upstairs all winter because of how toasty it is downstairs all winter. Oh, lights went off. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind wrapping up the stream here unless anybody has any questions or things they're dying to talk about or know. And also considering I'm going to be here for 12 hours on Saturday and for Sunday. I will be, for anybody who's going to be attending the auction stuff, I do get very on point, so I will be doing auction things, and I will likely, say, okay, here's the next thing that's up for grabs. It's this. Here's the Latin. Here's the strain name, common name if it has one. I'll probably give some details about it. It's a good feeder. Oh, it's this. Oh, if it's people haven't heard of it before, it's something I'm introducing. I'll give more details. But between things, there will be some time for more casual conversation and casual other stuff, probably when I'm eating and things like that. So there will be time for actual live streaming type questions, although I will likely be very callous and ignore them mid auctiony type stuff, just because obviously that's the more important thing, is making sure people are getting their bids in and letting their offers and whatnot be known on things. So, but only plenty of time for other stuff. Some eggs, the bug room is in my basement because that's the biggest continuous space in the house. And it's sort of it is both my life and my what's the word here? The reason and enabler of my existence is the bug room. This room right here is on the upstairs. I decided I wanted an office. I had an extra building, have an office, and it's been great. It helps me focus on things, and then it sort of evolved into, well, I can have some things I need to take a little bit closer care of or pay a little bit more attention to up here. And so then that's how all this other stuff got into here. But the bulk of things are downstairs. Actually, with how small most of these containers now, the isopods alone outweigh all the stuff in here. But anyways, there's still a good amount of stuff here, but there's a lot more downstairs. And also, again, I will be having eventually, moving everything into its own independent building when I move, which should be coming up. I said I was going to do it this fall. House repairs probably going to take longer than that, and so I'm going to be doing my hardcore looking into things in the spring. And so hopefully by July of next year, I will be moved out into a new building, and all this other stuff will have happened and gone well. So, all right, everyone, thanks for joining. It's been a wonderful stream. It's nice to have a stream where I don't feel panicked, like I have to run downstairs and do a bunch of stuff, or like I've got a lot of other stuff going on. Hopefully the rest of the next couple of weeks will be like that too. Very peaceful, relatively. And I hope to see everybody at the auctions this weekend. Again, it's both days. So although, again, the listings for what's going to be up for grabs when are already posted on the scheduled live streams videos, as well as in the blog post on the website on roachcrossing.com for the Bugapalooza auction details. So there's a schedule for so you can be in it is a bit vague. The things that I have the most of or thought were the most important have their own time slots. So there's big time slot for roaches and mantids and all this other stuff. I figured that would make it a little easier for people to kind of plan around, so they could hopefully be around when the things they're most interested would be going up. But there's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of stuff. So yeah. Night, everyone. I'll see you all this weekend, and until then and beyond to the next Roach Wiggle, may your cultures be ever bountiful.